Well, Professor Sharon, thank you for joining us here in Jerusalem Dateline. You know, a lot of people need to understand, I think, some of the basic tenets of Islam. What are the pillars of Islam?
Well, there are 5 pillars of Islam. The first one is the profession of faith. Second one is prayer, which means every Muslim has got to pray 5 times a day. The other one is to give alms. It's called zakat. Every Muslim has got to give alms. And of course, it is in the Islamic literature, it tells sometimes how much each Muslim has got to give. And every Muslim has got to go on pilgrimage, the Hajj, Hajj to Mecca, and every Muslim has got to fast in Ramadan during the whole month of Ramadan. These are the basic 5 principles of Islam, to which one can add another principle which is not part of the 5, but it's very important in Islam, is this the principle of the holy war. The holy war against the infidels in order to create from Islam a world religion, and not only a world religion but also a world government. Because religion and government in Islam is one and the same. It's not like in Christianity when you've got the church is one thing and the ruling and the government is another thing. There is no Caesar and God. There is no such a thing in Islam.
And what is this difference, this terms between the house of peace and the house of war?
The house of peace is very simple. The house of peace is the territory in which Islam rules. That's the house of peace. The house of war is the territory in which Islam should be ruling, and in the future it will rule. Islam would rule that area, and it would be part of the Islamic Empire. So there are 2 parts. The world is divided not only geographically, but it's also divided religiously. And religiously, it's divided into these 2 parts: the house of Islam, the house of peace, which is the house of Islam; the house of war, which is the house of the non-Muslims. So, if you come from America, then you are harbi. You come from the house of war. And basically, anybody who lives in the house of war is not a Muslim, is an infidel, and he is an enemy, just by the mere fact that he comes from the house of war.
And what is the difference between Islam and the Muslims who may or may not subscribe to all of the tenets of Islam?
First of all, in any society, in any religion, you would find people that are believers and non-believers. I mean, non-believers in being part of the society, but not infidels, but non-believers in the religion from which they come. But in the Islamic world, there are 2 things which every Christian should understand. First of all, as far as the Muslims are concerned, the majority of the Muslims are believers, and most of them would keep the rules of Islam and the different things which they have to do as Muslims. That's one thing. Secondly, the belief in the Quran. Yes, we read the Bible as Christians, as Jews, but there is no such attachment that every individual feels to the Bible as one feels to a Christian, with all the attachment that we feel to the Bible. The attachment of the Muslims to the Quran is unbelievable, and it for them it is a way of life. It's the real words of God, and anything that is in the Quran or interpreted by the real interpreters or the good interpreters of the Quran is regarded as something that comes from God Himself, particularly the text of the Quran. And this is something which one ought to understand. The holiness of the Quran is like a holiness of a guidebook that guides you in every step that you do if you are a Muslim and a real Muslim. Now, yes, we know that in the Christian world and the Jewish world, we regard the Bible as the Word of God. But it's very hard to explain it, that there is a tremendous difference between the attitude of Christian or Jew to the Bible and the Muslim to the Quran. Because sometimes we, a Muslim, a Christian or a Jew would say, okay, the Quran is holy to the Muslim. But The Muslim would say no, the Bible might be holy to the Jews and Christians, but they're making mistakes. They were not such good custodians of the Bible. That's why the Quran came to correct all the mistakes of the Jews and the Christians in the Bible.
Well, thank you, Professor Sharon. Appreciate your insight and understanding.
Pleasure.